see you all. You're all most welcome to our first Business Breakfast Live of 2022. And what better way to start than with Leo Clancy, the CEO of Enterprise Ireland, and we'll introduce Leo in a little while. As always, we're delighted that these events are run in association with Ronan Daly Jermyn. So good morning to Richard Martin and colleagues who are logged on there, and also our media partners, the Irish Examiner, and welcome this morning as well to the Irish Examiner team. Good to have you with us. A little bit of housekeeping as always, if that's okay. So keep those mics off, and also be aware that we are recording. You would have seen that as you came in. We do want to have a very interactive session, so we'll use the Q&A and the chat box to maximize that, and feel free as we go along to pop in any questions or thoughts that you may have. We don't have to hold those until the very end, and if there's a question there that fits in the conversation with Leo in a little while, we'll throw it in as we go along there. You can use either speaker view or gallery view as we go through the session, and obviously as well social media, hugely important, so hashtag CC Breakfast. So let's get a bit of activity out there this morning as well. And just to remind you, afterwards, for those of you that can stay on, and I encourage you to do so, we have about 15 minutes or so of breakout rooms and networking as soon as we finish with the conversation with Leo. So in around 9 o'clock, we'll start that up to 9:15. So I mentioned there the Irish Examiner, great partners of ours, and on behalf of the Examiner this morning, can I introduce Sean Murphy, who's the Circulation Manager. Sean, good morning to you.
Good morning, Conor. Thank you very much, and good morning, everybody. I'm just going to take a minute and a half of your Friday that you won't get back, I'm sorry, but I do have an Irish Examiner announcement that I hope will be of interest to a significant number of you here today, as it has been to other organisations over the last few days. By now, you will have heard of the Irish Examiner Home Delivery Programme, where we deliver newspapers to homes from Kinsale, Carrigaline, up as far as Mallow, Fermoy, and from Ballincollig, Blarney area to Middleton Cove, and most areas in between. This is at no extra cost to the home delivery subscriber, just the retail price of a newspaper to your door, and we're also delivering newspapers now in Kerry and Limerick. Last year, we then launched our digital subscription that allowed subscribers to read breaking news, sport, and everything we publish online via our apps. What was missing, and what many organizations requested us to look into, was our corporate and group subscription model. I'm delighted to announce that this, in the last fortnight, is now available, and I'm particularly delighted to welcome PwC as our first corporate client. We have subscription packages to suit all organizations from 5 employees upwards. You can purchase subscription band for your directors, your senior management team, and more importantly, as a perk or service for your employees. This gives them the opportunity to keep abreast of the most up-to-date news, nationally, internationally, and more importantly, locally. Only in the last few days, organisations such as the government departments and our partners such as Munster Rugby are signing up to our corporate packages. For those that may not be aware, the Irish Examiner won 10 awards last year for its investigative and campaigning journalism, including awards for the Irish Digital News Service of the Year. I'll put a link in the chat now to allow you to reach out to our customer care team to discuss your corporate options available to you and your organisation. Thanks for your time, and I hope to welcome companies here today to join our new and growing corporate community. Thank you very much. Conor.
Great, Sean, thank you very much. That's very positive and welcome news there this morning. So I'm sure there'll be sign-ups flowing through the day. So thanks for that, Sean, and well done to the Examiner team on moving forward with that corporate package. Very welcome. So look, as always, we're delighted to welcome 2 of our members as Soapbox pitches this morning. So first up, we've got Sarah West, who's the Fundraising and Development Executive with Epilepsy Ireland. Good morning, Sarah.
Morning, Conor. Morning, everybody. Thanks for having me on. I'm here to tell you all about Epilepsy Ireland's biggest upcoming campaign, which is on the 26th of March, and it's called Purple Day. It's our most important fundraising day of the year, and the last 2 years we've seen a 50% reduction in our fundraising income because of COVID. So we really want your help in making this the biggest and most successful Purple Day so far. There will be buildings lighting up purple all over the country and all over Cork. We have an office down in Ballincollig where our two wonderful community response officers, Niamh and Sharon, they're based there. And they provide services for anyone in Cork living with epilepsy and their families. So we could really use your help in helping to continue the service. We've always had a strong presence in Cork, and we have some wonderful volunteers down there who will be organising some fundraising events on the day. So please do support them or organise your own fundraising event. If you're a business, we'd really love to hear from you. We'd love to partner with you, or you can get involved by sponsoring Purple Day or having your own internal staff fundraiser. There's lots of ways you can get involved. If you're an individual, you can also, do your own fundraiser, a bake sale, a purple bake sale, a purple no school uniform day in your school, anything you like. There's lots of ways. It's going to be a really exciting day for everyone involved. So please come on down, get your purple t-shirts on and turn your business purple. Help us achieve society where no person's life is limited by their epilepsy. You can see how we do this more specifically through our community services, our advocacy, and our fundraising on our website. I'll post all the details in the chat. So thanks very much, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Sarah. And no doubt you'll get a lot of support from Cork business community on the back of that information. Thank you very much. Next up, we've got Tracy Sumstad, Director and Senior Financial Consultant with Oaktree Financial Services. Good morning, Tracy.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. My name is Tracy Sumstad. It's a pleasure to be here and join you all this morning. So I'm a very newly appointed Director of Oaktree Financial Services. Now, for those of you that don't know who Oaktree are, we're a financial broker firm based in Fermoy. It's a family-run business, and we were set up over a decade ago by Adrian and Norma Godwin. So what we do is we provide financial planning services for both individuals and for businesses. So on the individual or the personal side, we deal with life cover, income protection, pensions, critical illness cover, mortgages, all the standard things that most people need in the world we live in today. We do work and we specialize a lot in savings and investments. We work and we set up pensions and pension transfers, and we do an awful lot of retirement planning. Now, on the business side, we work with a lot of companies to set up group company schemes. We do group benefit schemes to help firms, I suppose, secure and retain good talent. We have of recent times worked with a lot of companies in redundancy situations, and we assist a lot of individuals with their defined benefit pension schemes and pension transfer options. We are hosting an investment market update webinar next Wednesday. So we'd be really excited for anybody or any of you guys that like to join us. It's next Wednesday, the 9th of February at 1 o'clock. So if you're interested, please join us on oaktreefinancial.ie and register there for free if you're interested. We'd love to see you. Thank you, everybody.
Great. Thank you, Tracy, and best of luck with that event coming up next week. Maybe just a quick reminder as well, the Cork Company of the Year Awards, we're open for applications, but next Monday evening is closing date. So look, very much encourage you to consider that, or to consider nominating another business as well that you think would be worthy of recognition. There's been some fantastic developments, investments, success stories over the last 12-24 months, and we really want to hear about those stories. So we have 4 categories: emerging business, so that's for high growth, high potential businesses under 4 years; SME for employees under 75 employees; large, over 75 employees; and our international category for those doing significant international activity, 250 people in Ireland, 500 or more overseas, and so on. So all of the information on corkchamber.ie, or feel free to contact myself or my colleague Niamh Frawley, who is running our awards program for us. So consider that for yourselves, consider it for a nomination, and closing date is next Monday evening. And the first stage, the early application process and the expression of interest in that, very, very straightforward. So don't be put off by the time frame. It's very, very easy to get that application into us. So next, can I introduce Chamber President Paula Colgan. Good morning, Paula.
Morning, Connor. Great to see everybody. Happy Friday to everyone. As I was coming in this morning, the birds were chirping and the traffic was certainly back to levels that we would have seen pre-pandemic as well. Just to give you an idea, I suppose, of the breadth of what Cork Chamber has involved, and just to take this week alone, thank you to our members. 300 Indigenous trees have been delivered right around the city, and we look forward to seeing those planted. And please share your stories in the next few weeks as well on social media. We also released our latest economic trend report, and some really interesting statistics coming through that. Definitely the resilience of the Cork business community, with 92% of you saying that you are confident about your business coming into 2022. But certainly some other trends coming through that really show the change that's going to happen in the workplace in the coming months. So 30% of our members have hired a fully remote role in the last 12 months, with over 60% of those roles hired from outside the Cork region. 70% of you in business have offered hybrid working options to any of your new hires. And 67% of you have implemented a digital transformation program to facilitate remote working in the past 12 months. So really interesting stats coming through there as well. And we are here to support that change in the workplace as well. And you will see that coming through in some of our events and activities in the coming weeks. We know that everybody is just so eager to get up and meet face to face. So watch this space. We will be coming out with some details of our face-to-face events in the next week or so, and really looking forward to that, and actually seeing people from legs down as well, as opposed to just on screen. So very much looking forward to that as well. Can I just say a huge thank you as well to the EI team in the region. It's an excellent partnership from a Cork Chamber perspective, led ably by Martin and all of the team as well. And Leo, thank you so much. We're delighted to have you join us this morning. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you very much, Paula. And now, Leo, good morning.
Morning, Connor. How are you? Delighted to be here.
Good to have you with us. So just to give a little bit of background. So before being appointed as CEO of Enterprise Ireland last year, Leo was the head of technology, consumer and business services at IDA. I was also a member of the executive management team there. And prior to all of that public sector career, he was 17 years in the telecommunications industry and a member of management, technical and engineering roles. So it's great to have you with us, Leo, and I suppose while you could be anywhere in the world today, by just coincidence of diaries, you're not that far away. You're down in lovely West Cork.
I am. So it's always great to be in Cork. So first of all, thanks for inviting me on, Connor, to yourself and Paula. You know, very kind to have you to be able to appear here this morning. It's always great to be in Cork, albeit virtually at the moment, but I'm glad now to say that I am physically in Cork as well at the moment. I'm actually sitting in West Cork in the Ludgate Hub in Skibbereen. So I'm in the middle of 2 days meeting clients in the region, and you know, it just reminds me of the great energy that is in Cork, in the city and county, and it's always a pleasure to be back here. So I'd just like to start maybe from my part by congratulating you in the Chamber and all your colleagues on the great work you do. And as Paula said, it is a great partnership and we really value it. So hoping to build on it over the next couple of years.
Absolutely, and thank you for that, Leo, and absolutely reiterate as well what Paula had said there a little while ago. And I suppose just to acknowledge as well and recognise that partnership. I think we have Martin Corkery and the team in the Cork office on this morning, and also Enterprise Ireland Chairman Terence O'Rourke, and newly appointed board member Jim Wolfe. I can see on screen in front of me there as well. So you're all really welcome this morning. Looking forward to a good discussion with Leo. So Leo, just maybe to kick off, look, you're relatively new in your role, but you certainly have your feet under the desk. You've had a set of results announced there a number of weeks ago, which were very positive, and we'll talk about the new strategy there in a second. But maybe, you know, can you talk a little bit about your own, you know, personal philosophy coming into the role, leading Enterprise Ireland, a hugely important, you know, government state agency driving our indigenous sector, and you know, at probably what most people would acknowledge a crucial thing. You know, I think people would be interested to understand your motivations, your philosophies, and how you see your contribution to a fantastic organisation over the next number of years.
Yeah, thanks, Conor. Look, great question to open up on. And just to say, from a personal point of view, I've always worked in client services and client success roles, be that engineering or public sector. And it's one of my personal passions is working with clients. And I would say yesterday now, and looking forward to a really great day meeting clients today. That's what drives and motivates me, just being able to understand how organizations I work with can help clients. And the flip side of that is building and supporting an excellent team. And as you mentioned, with Martin and the team in the region here and the wider EI team, there's an excellent support infrastructure for Irish Enterprise in the team at Enterprise Ireland. And that's the other part of motivation for me all through my career in leadership roles has been what can I do to help a team advance their mission on behalf of clients. So that's more the personal piece. In terms of this job, though, I passionately believe that Ireland can continue to be a leading location on all measures of business, and that we can actually grow the impact very substantially. I think Ireland is uniquely positioned, and particularly Irish Enterprise, uniquely positioned to grow and to add more value to the Irish economy. And every week I'm in this job, I believe that more and more. And it was the reason for me that I was excited about this job, to be honest, because I believe there is huge potential in Irish Enterprise, and I think the best is certainly yet to come.
Yeah, and just maybe to move on to talk about the strategy that you launched a couple of weeks ago. You've got a mission to accelerate the development of world-class Irish companies and get out into those global markets. So can you tell us a little bit about how Enterprise Ireland plans to do that? Because look, that's a mission, I suppose, that it's absolutely laudable, but it has been, broadly speaking, the focus of the organisation over the last number of years. So what's going to be different with this strategy? And maybe can you tell us, I know it's built across 5 pillars, maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we've launched a strategy in January. It was in conjunction with what were record job growth reported for Irish Enterprise. So we reported nearly 12,000 new jobs added, net jobs added last year by Irish enterprises after what was a pretty flat year in 2020 in the teeth of COVID-19. And that was a brilliant result, and hopefully it's a great signal of the confidence and what's to come for Irish enterprise. So that strategy that we launched is a 3-year strategy for the organization, but building towards a vision for 2030, and not for this organization per se, but for Irish enterprise. And our vision for Irish Enterprise is that formally that Irish enterprises will create solutions for global challenges and deliver sustainable prosperity throughout Ireland. And I think that is how we wrote it down, but it's actually not a bad way to tell it either. I think that Irish enterprises more and more, and I see this I was in Paris early this week at a conference and had a number of client events as well. And you can see the value that Irish companies bring to the global markets that they operate in. I think there is a huge opportunity for Irish enterprise to be a much stronger driving force. Now, you asked me what was different, so I'll tell you a little bit about what's the same and what's different. We're going to continue to be focused on jobs, exports, and regional development, as we always have been. Within the exporting piece, though, we're going to have a focus on new exporters, and government has a target of 2,000 additional SME exporters in the coming years, so that's going to be a formal part of our strategy. We're also going to be very focused on growing the entrepreneurial ecosystem, so focusing on more startups, and we already do a huge amount across the entire entrepreneurial ecosystem. We will focus on growing that more and more over the coming few years. We are going to focus on scaling companies as well. So we've set targets to increase the number of companies that are hitting different scaling bands above 10 million euros. So we want to see companies grow their revenue on global markets. In that context, we'll be putting in place some specific measures around financial scaling and trying to create a much more holistic view of how companies go about accessing a scaling journey and building up their own competency. We've had some great leadership programs over the year. We'll continue those. We'll build on those again. We've set targets for the number of leaders in Irish companies that will be on significant management development programs. We're taking a very specific view on productivity as well. So you often hear about productivity gaps when we compare particularly multinational and Irish enterprise. So we've set a target of 2.5% growth in productivity per annum over the coming years. And that is a change and a step up from where we have been. I think it's very important, and that will be enabled by increased innovation. So we have set a target of 1.4 billion euros for innovation performance by Irish companies in the year 2024. We've set targets for digitalization interventions, and we'll continue to work on lean and operational excellence as we have. And then fourth, but not least, we have a sustainability focus. So the Irish enterprise sector has some very challenging targets to meet in the context of our 2030 Climate Action Plan. We'll be supporting business to achieve its share of those targets. We'll also be taking a focus on companies that can grow and create solutions in what is a huge market. So the sustainability solutions market, carbon reduction, and other aspects of sustainability is going to be a massive market. We've got some excellent startups and scaled companies in that space. And I think that's a huge opportunity to support those other pillars of economic success. Last but not least, for ourselves, we're aiming to continue, in my view, to be the world's most successful enterprise development team for the benefit of our clients and for the benefit of our people, making the organization we work in an employer of choice and a place that delivers that client excellence. So
yeah, and thanks for thanks for that overview, Leo. It's very useful, and I will touch on the sustainability area, and you're right, it's a huge market opportunity, but it's also a huge leadership opportunity for Ireland as well, and Irish business. But maybe to get back to the maybe two areas, startup firstly, and maybe your perspectives on how we rate globally in terms of our startups, and then second, to look at, I think it will be recognised and acknowledged by everybody that scaling has been a challenge. Scaling at a level and a rate that I suppose repositions the perspective of Irish Indigenous industry globally. Right, we have some hugely successful companies, but probably not enough. Right, that get to that level. So maybe can you talk initially about the startup environment, and maybe we'll move on to scaling after that.
Sure. So I think we have a really positive startup environment, and we do see some great innovative startups coming out of Ireland. We've had a slew of unicorn announcements in recent months, as you'll know. We've performed really well, and that's it's a limited and specific measure focused on a small number of companies, but we have seen companies hitting that global scale, at least in terms of the valuation of the companies. We also do see some really good startup activity, and we've seen our entrepreneurial activity hold over 2021. We do see potential for it to grow further, and there's some great activity happening, particularly in the regions. I mean, I'm sitting in Ludgate now, and they're part of an emerging regional network around startup and scale up. So there's, I was in Kerry a couple of months ago, and if you look at how the RDI hub there, how Ludgate here is linking into work being done by Dogpatch and focusing on finding those companies that are ready to go on their entrepreneurial journey, that's very positive, I think, and that's really supported by us, obviously, through the investments we make in the hubs, but having regional and national impact. So I think that's increasing over time. The other thing we're seeing, though, is that our HPSU and competitive start fund numbers have held up very well. So we're seeing numbers holding during the pandemic, which I think was a good result given the fact that people couldn't get out and network and meet investors potentially. We've set a target of increasing those numbers by 20% over the coming years, and I think that's very possible in terms of what we invest in. We still held our position, Enterprise Ireland now, as the largest VC investor by deal volume in PitchBook's ratings this time last year. So we're eagerly awaiting the February 2022 results, but we're certainly very active as a startup location. So I'm really positive, and I think there's a lot of second and third time entrepreneurs out there who are feeding and supporting other entrepreneurs. And I think that virtuous cycle is only starting. If you look at the flywheel of entrepreneurship, and I think it is a flywheel, if you look at places like Israel and Silicon Valley, the areas we're most often compared to, I think you do have that flywheel effect over time where entrepreneurial activity feeds itself and the flywheel speeds up. And I think we're at the start of that speeding up cycle. If you look at scale up, we've seen we do have excellent scaled Irish companies, and we often forget about companies like Glanbia PLC and Kerry Co-op and Icon and some of the great global leaders, Ryanair, the companies that have started and built huge scale out of Ireland. I would say it's true that we haven't recently seen enough companies scaling up and IPOing. We are seeing some IPO activity. We've seen HealthBeacon go into the market just before Christmas. That's very welcome, to be honest, to see companies exploring public markets again out of Ireland. I think we've also seen those some very big acquisitions over time. So people would have seen E&I Engineering acquired towards the end of last year, and that's the other side of scaling. You know, you've got to companies will make decisions for themselves at points in time about what their path is, and companies are acquired all the time that are on those very strong scaling journeys and that are already global leaders. So I won't say it's a mission of ours that doesn't happen, but we certainly want to see more companies staying Irish for longer and seeing that they have the conditions to grow out of Ireland. And with the way the economy is at the moment, I think there's potential for that. Like, people don't need to fold in now to grow to global scale. And I think some of the unicorns that we're seeing are proving that. You can, particularly in a digital and services-based world, build a company to global scale out of Ireland. I think John Collison actually was quoted on this just before Christmas Christmas 12 months ago, saying that I think the quote was, I won't get it right, so please don't use this verbatim, but that you could have started Stripe in Ireland now, and it was great to see that, and I think that reflects the ambition that's out there. So I do think we will see more global leaders, and I do think we'll see more companies staying Irish and growing as Irish companies.
Yeah, and look, all very valid points. Absolutely. I did hear the Taoiseach comment last year in the context of, while you could argue the last 50 years have been absolutely hugely successful on the FDI front, that his perspective was that the next 50 years could be the time for exceptional growth in our indigenous sector. But equally, we hear, and I'm sure others on the call hear some of the challenges perhaps at a policy level, particularly maybe around startups and some of the areas that we all hear about, the demands on equity, right, in terms of, rather than perhaps really low cost loans to businesses at that early stage where they maybe feel they're being forced to give up significant levels of equity. Areas in terms of share options for business and the limits there, which are perhaps impacting on businesses who are competing for talent at the moment, maybe with larger organizations who can afford to pay more, but maybe attractive share option schemes are a way of focusing on those businesses. And the other one is around research and development, and where there are funds there, perhaps a view that there's an element of complexity that could be removed to the R&D process.
Yeah, no, I think, and the policy points are well rehearsed. I'm not going to go back over them here this morning in terms of tax treatments and things like that. I think, though, the equity situation is changing, and very fast. There's global equity is very aware of Ireland. I think we've seen lots of companies now do raises, and particularly back to some of the unicorns. If you look at Flipdish and Wayflyer and companies like that, companies that are very investable will be found by equity, and I've no doubt that. And we're seeing evidence with some of those stories that is happening, and happening at an increasing rate. I expect we'll see more of that. So I think that's great, and we have excellent Irish VC firms and seed and venture firms, including some of your own with Kernel Capital in Cork and companies like that. So I think there's an excellent Irish ecosystem, particularly at the seed and venture stage. We're in the process of making further investments at that stage. But then Follow Capital is certainly much more aware of Ireland. So I think that's not the limitation it was 4 or 5 years ago. If you look at the R&D tax credits and R&D funding, certainly there is a level of complexity, and I think necessarily, when you have anything, and I think this is true in nearly all revenue-based jurisdictions in the world, but it is something that's a very substantial benefit to companies as well. If you look at grant programs from ourselves and R&D tax credits, I think it certainly is a substantial benefit. And for companies doing R&D, putting in the work is usually worth it, and it's worth it in more than just the financial reward terms. I think when you go in, and I've seen this with R&D grants that we have given in both IDA and Enterprise Ireland, when you go into companies and you talk about the structure that they need in order to make a proposal, or to, whether it's for our grants or for tax credits, it certainly puts good discipline on the thinking, So I don't think sometimes that discipline, that overhead is a necessarily bad thing. But that's my view. But certainly I know it's something that's on policy agenda.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Thank you. And maybe a relevant question as we just close out on the strategy element from Patrick Buckley there up in up in Mallow, and probably a regional skills agenda here as well. What is the plan, the strategy to support and sustain company-led clusters, both existing and new?
Yeah, so there's I think it depends, and the definition of cluster is an interesting one. You know, I think we have some really good clusters. Some of them are self-motivated. We support a lot of clusters through things like our Regional Enterprise Development Fund and our Border Enterprise Development Fund. I'm actually sitting in a facility this morning where we have actually contributed significant funding to the development of it, and it has led to a cluster of digitally oriented companies here in Skibbereen, for instance. So we'll keep doing that. I think the one caution I'd put on clusters is it's not just or even about what we do. I think if you're looking at clusters, it really needs a community of companies coming together and being clear about what they want out of a cluster. And that's the bit when that happens, it works very well. And then we can come in and support something that's very clear, and we certainly will do so. You know, I'd say we'll continue to be in the space, but I think we have to be very clear about what cluster actually means and what the value is for the companies, and also what the companies will contribute to it.
Okay, thanks, Leo. And so you have your questions there, I think, from Tom and Cut. I think Leo has probably covered in terms of the strategy and so on. But just to move on a little bit in terms of, look, we've come through, I suppose, extraordinarily challenging, unusual time, both Brexit and COVID. How do you think, Leo, you know, your clients have stood up to those dual challenges, and particularly, I suppose, in the context you're all across the country meeting all of your clients? Maybe give us a perspective on, you know, everyone is talking about the changed work environment, what it will mean, you know, what it might look like in 12 months, 2 years' time. I think you have a unique perspective on that. We'd love to hear.
So first of all, in terms of how companies have embraced the challenges, very well. I think we've seen Irish companies adapt better, in my view, than most other jurisdictions. It's been certainly very flexible. I meet companies every day that have done wonderful work, frankly, in terms of how they've addressed the challenges that have been before them for the last couple of years. And we have seen that in the numbers as well. If you look at the export numbers last year, they were flat for us at the mid-year point, for 2020. But that was a great result compared to what had happened in the European economy, where economies were typically down an average of 9%. So Irish companies held up very strongly, and then we saw that significant growth in jobs last year as companies came out of the pandemic. So the Irish companies boxed really clever, and they've had a myriad of challenges to deal with: COVID-related work restrictions. Companies have had to deal with supply chain constraints, both in terms of containers and price of goods, and had to pivot with all of those. I won't say they haven't been hurt, but they've certainly been very innovative in how they've dealt with them. So I think that's to the good. If you look at the future and change of work, I think we're all grappling with what's the future going to look like, and how much of this environment will still be part of our lives, and how much will be back to normal. I think what I'm hearing, though, from companies across the country, and there's no one I've spoken to that hasn't said, there's a strong expectation among the workforce of a continued hybrid experience as a minimum. And in some cases, remote work becoming a requirement, particularly areas like software development. You know, we're hearing that in order to access talent, people are being incredibly flexible to bring those workers onto the workforce and keep them. And it does create challenges for companies as well, where you know, a regional location might have been a very positive discriminator for companies, where you have employees and they're in the region and you're the employer of choice in that region. Actually, now companies are saying to us, well, people can leave the company and stay in the town and get a job with a company in Dublin that's fully remote. You know, so some of the, I think in the context of today, some of the regional advantages that we've seen might actually dissipate a little bit. On the flip side, for the regions themselves, it's very positive, because more and more people can come and work in regions and be working remotely into other businesses. So I think it's a real mix.
Yeah, and I think that's a view is broadly held, Leo. But equally, you know, I'm hearing from some across our members that, you know, there are concerns and challenges around the new legislation as well. And it's just your question here from Donna Kiernan around. I might just, it's easier maybe just to read it out, to get views on employer concerns over legislating on remote working at this time, when we simply don't know how things will play out. There are many lessons learned over the past 2 years. But when full life resumes, we just don't know what this will mean. It's not a one size for all. Yeah,
no, I've read Donna's question there. So I think it's a great question. I think I think the legislation is still being formed, and the legislation is around the right to request remote working. So it's certainly being formed, but I think regardless of that, this is going to be a reality for employers, no matter whether there's legislation or not. Employers are going to be faced with employee demands, and there's so many employers out there at the moment that are looking at remote working as part of their future model that it is going to be a discriminatory factor. The second part of Donald's question, though, and comment, I agree, it's going to be an interesting year and probably 2 years in terms of how this will play out. How much will we snap back to an office-based way of working, and how much will that be a requirement as we get back to normal, and how much will we stay hybrid or remote? I think those questions are yet to be answered. So I think it's a lot of wait and see. What I will say, though, is that I think regardless of the legislation, I think this is coming, and we all need to think about how we deal with it and how we give the best employee proposition in the transitory phase. I'd say for employers as well, though, you know, putting in place review periods, no matter what your initial stance on remote working, kind of having the opportunity with your employees to review it over time is probably a sensible approach as well.
Yeah, and absolutely, I think it's an area of huge focus for everyone at the moment, and from a competitiveness point of view as well, and from a talent retention, I think, particularly with SMEs. And there's a point in there, I think, a follow-on from Donner across that in terms of nurturing teams, you know, company culture, and retaining talent. You know, it's not all about the legislation as such; it's about the impacts going forward. So I think there's a long way to run on this yet.
There is, and I have to say, I was in Paris on Monday and Tuesday, and I got the opportunity to meet our European leadership team, and just fantastic. The difference it makes to be in a room with people and having a discussion in that format, you know, it just makes a huge difference in terms of the interaction. So, and I do worry that we've lost sight of that a little bit, and I think people have confused in some cases the efficiency of remote working with the productivity of remote working, and I think we have to be very careful about that distinction.
Okay, let's move on. You touched on in your overview of the strategy, I think it was your fourth pillar on sustainability and the opportunities there, and the role of Irish industry in terms of climate change and so on. The EU Green Deal offers huge opportunity. It's probably seen as being a bit cryptic at the moment, and I think it's hard for most on this call to understand what it means to them, how they may benefit. What are EI's plans to, I suppose, decipher that and bring it down to the grassroots, and so that it delivers real value for business?
Yep. So one tangible outcome of the EU Green Deal is the National Resilience and Recovery Plan, and there is green funding within that. So we've already started last year a Climate Action Enterprise Fund, which is a small consultancy effort for companies that are embarking on their climate action journey to actually bring in someone to have a look at their business and give them a framework for how they do carbon reduction and sustainability over time. So that's our starting point. But for years we've been supporting companies with green programs, Green Start and Green Plus, where we will have consultants come in, and we co-invest with companies in terms of bringing in consultants to look at their implementing projects in the green space. We'll continue to do that. We'll double down on it over time. And we've also supported companies with environmental aid under EU legislation to make capital investments that decarbonize their base. So we've been working in that space for years, to be honest, but we'll be doubling down on that, and we will be allocated funding under the National Resilience and Recovery Plan to help increase the amount of effort we put in that space. I would say for companies as well, the other thing we'll be doing is making sure that they understand the need to react in the market. So as I talk to colleagues overseas, we have 40 offices around the world, and lots of colleagues, in over 150 colleagues working in those offices. And what they're seeing in global markets at the moment is that every buyer, and I think all of your colleagues from industry on the line will know this, every sophisticated buyer in the world is demanding sustainability planning and credentials from their suppliers. That's only going to increase. So I think we're going to be sending that message hard as well, that look, companies need to adapt sooner than later, because the last thing you want in a business is to be shut out of your market because you haven't done something. The supports are there. I think we can support companies with it. And then there's a cost imperative. People are very conscious now of the price of gas. It's probably a precursor to increasing carbon taxes over time, and other pressures that are going to come on business if they haven't decarbonized in advance. So again, I think there's at least at least many good reasons for companies, and we're here to help and signpost. And it's not just all about Enterprise Ireland. We have SEAI and other partners that can help in the Irish ecosystem, and we can help signpost that.
Yeah, and it's again for many businesses, particularly smaller businesses, a huge challenge to get your head around this whole agenda. And do you feel there's an awareness deficit around what sustainability means for business, what the broad ESG agenda actually involves, and how businesses actually should be tackling that? And is there a major first step in terms of increasing that awareness, informing, and then providing the supports that are needed to deliver?
Yeah, I'd say there is an awareness gap. It's shrinking, and I think it's shrinking by the month. We surveyed clients at the start of last year, and I think we saw a very high percentage that didn't have a sustainability plan or didn't have a climate action plan and didn't see it prioritizing it in the next period of time. That gap had shrunk by October when we ran our International Markets Week, and I think it's shrinking by the month. And COP26 that happened in November, I think, focused an awful lot of minds on this. So I think the awareness gap is shrinking. The bit I worry about more is the ability to focus gap. That there's a lot of companies that are busy with the things we've discussed: Brexit and COVID and supply chain challenges and all of the business of growing a business. And until sustainability becomes an issue, it can be hard to focus on it. So I think that's probably a bigger worry for me, actually. How do management teams carve out time to focus on this area?
Yeah, and of course, it's much broader than quite often there's a view that sustainability is all about the green agenda, all about climate change, but we're very focused on our alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals, and equally important in there are areas in terms of gender pay gaps, diversity, inclusion in the workforce, and so on. What can Enterprise Ireland do to be real leaders in this space, and to encourage our Indigenous sector going out into a global environment to be seen as leaders?
Yeah, so I think we already support quite a number of initiatives, such as Going for Growth, which many people may know. We've launched our own initiative called the Level Project. Those are initiatives specifically on gender diversity. We're also measuring, the number of board members and leadership team members now with companies that are female, and making sure that we understand the gender diversity mix of our clients. But I think giving people supports, as we do with the Level Project, to start thinking about an implementation plan for their business for that diversity, that's going to be absolutely critical. So that's an area we're already deeply involved in. If you look at other areas of diversity, we have a very natural advantage in Ireland in that we have the highest non-locally born workforce in the EU for a country of our size. So we have about somewhere over 15% of our workforce that wasn't born in the country. The only countries that have a bigger ratio than that are much smaller even than Ireland. So we're doing very well in terms of general diversity, and it's going to be very important. We're also working with government departments around ensuring that we continue to have an attractive proposition for talent coming from other places, and that we continue to have access to visas and work permits at scale for non-EU people to come to Ireland. And I think there's a risk in the current global environment with COVID that migration and the availability of talent from all over the world to come to Ireland and contribute to our economy and their careers will slow down, and we can't afford that. And that's another domain where I think a real focus on diversity is going to be very important.
Yeah, you just started up on what was going to be my next point, Leo, in terms of talent attraction. We have some leaders on the call this morning of our third level and further education institutions, and they're doing a super job. But we need to be able to attract talent from everywhere. And do you think, again, back to at a policy level, is there more can be done? How do we make ourselves more attractive as the place to come to build your career, build your life? It's something that in Cork we see as a major opportunity, something we're very focused on in the chamber, in terms of talent attraction now as much as investment attraction.
Yeah, I think, I think this is something the policy is incredibly focused on, and I don't think there's a person I've met in government or in the public sector who doesn't believe this is a key priority for Ireland. And I think that's a great thing. It's a real comment on our Irish economy. We're a nation of migrants historically, and I think in the context of where we want to be in the world and who we want to be in the world, it's important to be welcoming and to be open to that. And as you go around the country, you meet so many people from so many different places that have come here and have made their lives and felt welcome. So I think in terms of the brand and the welcome, there's no issue. I mean, there are always, structural challenges in terms of bringing people into Ireland, but I think our system very receptive. Some of the things that are mitigating against it at the moment. Frankly, one of the issues is that economies everywhere are booming at the moment, so it is hard to create that differentiated proposition because the markets that would traditionally have come to Ireland as an economic opportunity are actually doing well economically themselves. So I think we're going to have to continue to build that story and be more differentiated over time. Things that government is doing very generally in the space of housing provision and education and all those other aspects are very positive as well to the long-term agenda for migration.
Okay, and can I encourage everyone there to keep, we've 7 or 8 minutes to go, to pop in some more questions.
Seen a few follow-ups to my last question there.
Yeah.
To my last comment there, right around.
Well, look, maybe let's deal with that one. Look, we do hear, constantly, visas being an issue, and I know there are efforts made, through the system to prioritize and try to assist in as much as possible, but there's still a perception out there that visas are a challenge.
Yeah, I think that the comments there about processing times, and processing times fluctuate depending on, there are various times of the year that are more challenging than others, but also volumes have gone up overall. So there is an increase in visa applications, and that's something that we are very focused on. We're working with our department, because our parent department also incredibly focused on working with their colleagues in Department of Justice to continue to streamline that system. I think that they did a great job after a very difficult start of moving a lot of those aspects of application to digital and remote. That's going to continue, but at the moment there is pent-up demand that is leading to extended lead times. But I know that individuals who run those sections within our own department and within Justice, and they are very focused on trying to shift those backlogs. And we want Ireland to be a place that can continue to promise very speedy work permits. So I think it's not for want of effort and orientation. It's just a fact of the pent-up demand that's out there at the moment. And I think that will improve as the year goes on. Okay,
just to move on a little, your clients are operating in a global environment. I suppose it's fair to say at the moment there's significant movement. Global trade dynamics are ever changing, and there's a lot happening right now, be it China, be it maybe risks around the tensions in Ukraine and so forth. Broadly speaking, what's your perspective on whether global trade dynamics and changes are an opportunity or a challenge to your client base at the moment? And what might be your biggest concern?
Yeah, I think there's lots of risks out there at the moment in global geopolitics. I won't go into them because we're all aware of them. The only thing is that I think there are similar risks for nearly everyone, and I think in terms of Ireland, we're very well positioned. That Irish companies have proven themselves more adaptable and more agile than most. We're a society that's very welcomed, no matter where you go. If there is a major geopolitical event in any one location, all countries that trade with those locations will be affected. But I think, as we've seen with COVID and Brexit, Irish companies have been particularly agile in terms of dealing with the challenges. I think that'll continue to be the case. And Ireland is a country that's very welcomed, and our brand is very welcome. As I said, we have 40 offices overseas, and you see the partnership approach that we take. I think that's going to be hugely valuable in terms of dealing with any speed bumps that happen in the global economy. It's I think we could talk all day about the potential impacts, but it all comes down to how you deal with them when they arise. I think we're very well set up to do that.
Okay, just to move on to, you touched on infrastructure a minute or two ago, Leo, and maybe just to focus a little bit on that and infrastructure and connectivity. I suppose considering where you're actually seated at the moment, and probably one of the most connected towns in the country, if not further afield, the question isn't necessarily relevant where you are now. But broadly speaking, you've got a client base across every corner of the country. we have a national broadband plan, there is rollout taking place. Are we seeing it moving quickly enough? How much of an added benefit and an added impact could we have if that was, moving much more quickly?
Yeah, so I'm sitting in one of the most connected buildings, I think, in the country at the moment in Skibbereen. But I think, look, I think the National Broadband Plan, first of all, is a landmark investment. It gives fibre-based broadband connectivity to almost every home in the country. That's going to be a huge achievement. These things do take time, though, and I do come from that industry. I worked in the fibre industry for years and telecommunications industry. These are massive in infrastructure projects, and they take the time that they take to roll out. I will say that Ireland actually is, albeit that broadband is never as universal as you want it to be, and I think that's true in every country. Ireland certainly isn't a laggard even before the National Broadband Plan in terms of broadband provision on a percentage of homes basis. I think it is getting it out into the regions that are most deprived of it, and I think the guys are very focused on this. I know colleagues in the Department of Communications that work very closely with are focused on speeding up that rollout as much as they can, but these things take time. What I will say is once it's done, it's going to be something that will set us apart in the global economy. There are very few to no countries that have put the level of quality investment into broadband that we're seeing with the National Broadband Plan. And I think it's certainly a very far-sighted investment by the Irish government.
Yeah, and I suppose the other area then in terms of infrastructure is and connectivity is around our airports, and hopefully getting that level of connectivity back up to pre-COVID levels. So I'm sure you'd welcome the perspective of government in maintaining supports for our airports to ensure that your clients have every opportunity to connect far and wide.
Yeah, and government gets that again. It's something that I haven't heard any policymaker disagree with. It comes down to load factors and what you can convince airlines to do and how much business is going to be. And that's where organisations like the Chamber play a huge part, and you have done an excellent job over time in Cork in making the case that, and particularly for business travellers and regular business travellers, that airlines and airport authorities fully understand the demand profile and that we can make the case for these, because ultimately they're commercial decisions and they need to be supported by the appropriate demand. But I think there is huge support across the board for as many airline connectivity services as we can get, and you'll see that now on St. Patrick's Day with ministers going around the world. And it's a great example of how Ireland wants to engage and wants to be connected with the world. So I think that will put this into more focus again.
Yeah, absolutely, and we are approaching that time of year, I suppose, when our diplomatic corps and foreign affairs and Team Ireland overseas, be it Enterprise Ireland, Tourism Ireland, ID Ireland, I suppose, have a really busy time through March in particular. Just touching on your own international team, who in my experience are outstanding representatives, do a fantastic job supporting Irish business. What are you seeing, or what are they seeing out in the global marketplace at the moment?
In general terms, I think what we're all seeing is that it depends on the jurisdiction, but one theme we're actually seeing is that public procurement is becoming a huge feature in a lot of countries. So with the stimulus monies that are now coming through in all countries, if you look at EU stimulus or elsewhere, there's a lot of public sector investment happening, a lot of infrastructure being invested in, and that's a huge opportunity for companies. That's one of the areas where we're seeing, just this week in Europe, that was one that we talked about quite a bit, because it's often an area that companies are afraid of. People find public procurement difficult in Ireland at times to engage with, and even more so overseas. But I think that's a big opportunity that companies often ignore at their expense, because it's certainly, if you get the right approach to it, it can work. But we're seeing private sector spending grow as well. There's huge opportunities, and in Europe, there's opportunities for Irish suppliers to come in and help other partners and companies with some of the supply chain shortages that they're seeing from other jurisdictions. So I think there are great opportunities, particularly in Europe at the moment. But into the US, you're seeing labor shortages and shortages of commodities. And again, that market is booming. I think huge opportunity. Middle East, I was in Saudi Arabia and Dubai in November, and they have massive infrastructure projects and huge demographic change happening in the next year. So the story everywhere is about growth, and that's what the team are handling at the moment. and huge amounts of infrastructure investment going in that's creating stimulus elsewhere, lots of digital transformation happening. And if you look at companies like some of your great Cork companies, they're really benefiting from those technological trends. So great opportunities, the short answer to.
Okay, no, that's really positive to hear, and I suppose there is opportunity for all on this call and further afield to engage with Enterprise Ireland and to get a better understanding of the marketplace, and sometimes the location and the market that you have not considered that may appear to be more challenging isn't necessarily so. I think a broad mind in that perspective and to work with the Enterprise Ireland team. I see a question here. You mentioned public procurement. Paula has a question there in terms of our own public procurement here, whether there should be more of a focus on the sustainability agenda or those that have significant sustainability being prioritised.
Yeah, I actually not an expert on where the Irish formal requirements for sustainability in public procurement are at the moment, but I know that focus is increasing, and I think, Paula, it's probably only a matter of time before that's a more substantial requirement in tendering of all sorts, including public. It's coming, and that's the message I would pass on to people on sustainability. If you don't have a plan and you can't answer a tender requirement to show your sustainability credentials, you are at risk at the moment. So I think it's going to be a bigger feature.
Yeah, and I suppose final question from me, Leo, is a very broad one, but I suppose it gives you scope to address it in whatever manner you see fit. But what advice do you have for any business seeking to scale and grow and get out into the international markets and develop that footprint? It can seem quite daunting, right, for many businesses. And there are huge supports there. There's a hugely experienced team within Enterprise Ireland. But what specific advice would you give?
I think you gave it a few minutes ago, Conor. It's talk to your local Enterprise Ireland office. So if there are people, we've got Martin and his team on the line. So just pick up the phone and talk to us. I think there's no better way to engage. And I've had, as I said, lucky enough to have spent time with my colleagues in France this week. And you see the commitment and the passion for helping companies that our people have. You'll definitely get a willing ear and you'll get an honest perspective. So that's what we can promise.
Great, Leo. Thank you very much. Look, I found that conversation really, really interesting, and it's great to see that you're down in Cork and spending valuable time engaging with your Cork client base. So we'll welcome you back to Cork on any occasion, and look forward to getting to meet you in person, not before too long, hopefully.
Thank you, Conor, and thanks, Paula. Thanks to the entire team at the Chamber, and congratulations on all the good work you continue to do. And I look forward to being in Cork more often now going forward.
Super, great. And thank you very much, Leo. Have a great day. Everybody else, I hope you enjoyed that last 45 minutes or so with Leo. Enterprise Ireland, doing a superb job, and I think listening to Leo there at the helm, I think the future is only brighter, and a huge resource for all business, and something that needs to be embraced, I think. Just a few thank yous just to wrap up. As always, thanks again to Ronan Daly Jermyn for your support, and also to the Irish Examiner. And thank all of you for taking the time to be with us this morning. Keep an eye on corkchamber.ie for any news and upcoming events. And we have some very exciting news coming your way very soon as well, as Paula was touching on a little bit earlier on. And for those of you that can stay on for the networking session, we'll have some breakout rooms and so on for the next 15 minutes. So I'm going to hand over now to my colleague Helena, who will lead you all through that session. So have a great day, have a great weekend, everybody, and I'll talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.